3 bone-chilling first day on the job horror stories that haunt you forever. The clock struck 9, and the echo of the office doors slamming shot through the building like the crack of a whip. It was the first day on the job for Lisa, but she could feel something strange in the air. A chill crawled down her spine, making her question every creak and tremble of the old structure that housed the marketing company. What secrets lived inside these walls? She glanced around at her new co-workers, their eyes darting with nervous energy. Something wasn't right. The walls were decorated with cheerful posters and bright colors, yet beneath it all lay an unshakable sense of dread. The receptionist's smile was too wide, teeth glinting in the fluorescent lights like ominous warning signs. When Lisa caught her gaze, the woman's smile faltered for just a beat, and Lisa's heart skipped. "You'll get used to it," the receptionist said, her voice barely a whisper, as if it carried the weight of some dark truth. As noon approached, whispers fluttered between the cubicles, stories of past employees who had left abruptly, never to be seen again. "I hear odd things happen at night," said a guy in a rumpled shirt, clutching a coffee as if it were his lifeline. The lights dimmed suddenly, creating shadows that danced ominously across the faces around her. Laughter echoed from somewhere in the back of the office. But it was hollow, as if mocking. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The afternoon dragged on. Lisa sat at her desk, eyes glued to her screen, trying to absorb the workflow, but her mind couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. And then she heard it, a soft, raspy whisper curling around her like fog. "Get out." It seemed to crawl in through her ears and nestle in her thoughts, squeezing her brain until panic welled up within her. She whipped her head around, heart racing, but no one seemed to notice. Were they all part of some twisted game? But just then, the lights flickered again, plunging them into temporary darkness, and there it was, a shape, a shadow flitting just out of sight. Goosebumps prickled on Lisa's arms as dread consumed her. What had she gotten herself into? The door creaked open, and a man in a black suit walked in with an unsettling calm. "Welcome," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're going to love it here." And in that moment, Lisa realized that her first day might just be the spark that ignited a horror story she'd never forget. What revelation awaited her in the depths of that office? The room felt unbearably suffocating. Lisa's pulse thundered in her ears, each beat punctuating the silence that enveloped her like a thick fog. The man in the black suit, his face frozen in a polite but eerie expression, lingered by her desk, surveying her as if she were an exhibit. What do you mean?" she stuttered, her voice wavering. The words barely escaped her mouth before an invisible weight pressed down on her chest. Was it fear? Or something more sinister? "We have a special culture here," he replied, his tone so smooth it made her skin crawl. "What you need to understand is that we value loyalty above all else." He leaned closer, and Lisa could smell something acrid on his breath, a mix of stale coffee and something rotten. "You'll learn soon enough." Before she could respond, he straightened and turned away, leaving her quaking in her chair. Desperate to shake off the encounter, she forced herself to focus on the computer screen, but the monitor felt like a portal to another world, one much darker than the office she sat in. The clock ticked downward, each passing minute feeling like an eternity. The whispers persisted, slipping through the cracks of her focus. "Get out," they echoed in her head, each repeated phrase amplifying her fear. Unable to bear it any longer, Lisa decided she needed a break. She stood up, her legs shaky as she glanced around the office. The other employees seemed distant and hollow, shadows of their former selves, trapped in cycles of quiet desperation. She threaded her way through the maze of cubicles, avoiding eye contact, she didn't want to attract attention to her turmoil. As Lisa headed toward the break room, she noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of a long corridor. A peculiar light flickered from inside, casting erratic shapes against the wall. Curiosity battled against fear, but the pull was too strong. She walked closer, each step heavy with anxiety. Suddenly, the laughter she'd heard earlier pierced the silence. It was louder now, vibrant but unsettling, as if 6 voices were intertwined in a manic conversation. Just as she reached for the doorknob, the laughter stopped. A cold breath of air washed over her, sending goosebumps racing down her arms, that S when she heard it again. A soft, rasping "get out," but this time it was different, more insistent, urgent. She hesitated, her heart hammering in her chest like a frantic bird wanting to escape. Was it all in her head? Or was someone or something trying to warn her? Swallowing her fear, Lisa pushed the door open. It creaked like a nightmare coming to life. Inside was a dimly lit room covered in archaic symbols and photographs pinned to a corkboard. But what sent shivers through her was the materialization of shadows that seemed to dance upon the walls in tandem with a low humming. Panic seized her as the shadows flared, revealing faces, hollow eyes, twisted mouths like the lost souls of those who had come before her. Before she could scream, the door slammed shut behind her. Trapped in that room, reality warped around her, and she felt the walls pulsate with the energy of the whispers. Here, in this hidden chamber, were the remnants of those she had heard about, the missing employees. It was a trap, designed to ensnare, to consume. What awaited Lisa in that claustrophobic space? Was it truly the end, or could she find a way out? The echoes of her fate drew closer as the laughter returned, filling the air once more with the promise of terror. The shadows lengthened, and she realized with horror nothing magical awaited, only the twisted longevity of despair. How long had she been walking into the unknown? Would anyone come to her rescue, or was this office a spiral of doom she couldn't escape? The air inside the room became thick, as if the walls themselves were closing in on her. The flickering light cast strange shapes that stretched and twisted, morphing into ghastly figures that taunted her from the periphery of her vision. Lisa's breath quickened, each inhale an echo of her rising panic. She pressed her back against the cold wall, feeling the slight tremor behind the surface as if it were alive. "Get out!" the voice boomed again, but this time it was accompanied by guttural sounds that reverberated off the walls. Desperation clutched at her throat. She didn't want to die here, forgotten like the others. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of urgent pleas blending into one another, fragmenting her already fragile resolve. Run! Leave! It felt like a warning from the very souls captured here, trapped in a cycle of torment that threatened to engulf her next. What if they were real? What if they were warning her of something waiting not just behind her, but within her, a darkness seeking to tether her spirit to this place? Taking a deep breath, Lisa forced herself to look around. The cluttered corkboard held faded photographs surrounded by fraying edges. Faces stared back at her, but they weren't just any faces, they were eerily familiar. She recognized some from the office, others she could have sworn she'd seen in passing. Each photograph was accompanied by a name, all crossed out with heavy, jagged lines. "No," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, the realization sinking deep into her bones. They had all come before her, and now they were no more than echoes of despair. From deep within the shadows, another laugh erupted, picking up a rhythm that coaxed the shadows into a frenzied dance. Lisa's heart pounded louder, drowning out her thoughts. It felt like a game, and she hadn't been invited. "What do you want from me?" she cried, anger scorching her fear. But the response was silence, thick and suffocating. Then, as if sensing her defiance, the voices returned, this time more insistent. "Join us." They harmonized, an eerie chant that felt both inviting and choking. The chill seeped into her skin, and she staggered back, knocking over an old metal chair that clanged against the concrete floor, the sound seemingly loud enough to awaken the spirits within. In that moment, something shifted in the energy of the room. The flickering light steadied, illuminating a narrow exit that had not been there before. It beckoned with an otherworldly glow, but it was dangerously close to the flickering shadows. Lisa weighed her choices: stay among the shadows or run toward the unknown light. A surge of determination swelled inside her, displacing the suffocating fear. The laughter morphed again, this time into sobs, agonized, chilling wails that laced the air with foreboding. Loose papers fluttered and swirled around her, urging her to make a decision. Get out, they warned, and the urgency pushed her feet to move. She sprinted toward the light, ignoring the whispers that begged her to turn back, to join the chaos instead of fleeing it. Just as she reached the threshold, the shadows lunged at her, a flurry of darkness and malice. Panic surged within her. She could feel their cold breath on her skin, desperately seeking to claim her. With one last push, Lisa dove through the light, praying it was an escape rather than another trap. The world blurred around her, the chaos of the shadows fading behind her as she fell into a void, her heart racing. What lay on the other side? The uncertainty gripped her as effectively as the shadows had before. Had she truly escaped, or had she just woken up to a different kind of nightmare? The light enveloped her, a brief respite that felt almost deceptive. But she could still hear it: the laughter, the whispers, and deep down, a promise that her ordeal wasn't over yet. As darkness tugged at her consciousness, a single thought pierced through: is the office just the beginning? The light suddenly gave way to a blinding flash, and as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished, plunging Lisa into an oppressive darkness. She hit the ground hard, the cold, unforgiving surface jolting her back to panic. The air was thick with an acrid scent that made her stomach churn. She looked around, but all she could see was an endless void. Where am I? She gasped, her voice a small, trembling sound swallowed by the silence. It felt like a chasm of fear had opened beneath her feet. The shadows from before lingered at the edges of her mind, taunting her with memories of those agonized wails. Just a dream, she told herself, but doubt gnawed at her insides. Straining to listen, she could hear the faintest echoes of laughter drifting through the ether, chilling her to the core. It felt as if the shadows had found a new home within her head. Were they really gone? Or were they lying in wait, determined to understand her new reality? She forced herself to rise. The ground was rough, gravelly against her palms. Gritting her teeth, she stood, her pulse hammering in her ears. Then, a glimmer caught her eye. Faint and far away, a flickering light began to pulsate like a heartbeat. With cautious determination, she moved toward it. Each step was hesitant, the darkness around her palpable, wrapping around her like a shroud. The laughter grew louder, almost jubilant, causing her heart to race even faster. It was no longer a playful sound, it became mocking, cruel, as if it were reveling in her desperation. Why are you doing this? She yelled into the void, her voice cracking. The flickering light seemed to flicker in response, dancing at the edges of her vision, darting away just as she thought she could grasp it. Join us. A voice hissed, the words raspy and filled with malice. She knew that voice. It belonged to one of the face-crossed figures from the photographs. A shudder ran down her spine, cold and sharp. What had these trapped souls become? Leave me alone. She shouted defiantly, but the shadows only surged closer, billowing in response to her anger. The air thickened, each breath becoming more labored as a strangling fear clawed at her throat. She couldn't stay here, the shadows were trying to close in, trying to drag her back into whatever this was. More desperate than ever, she sprinted toward the light, not fully believing it would lead her to safety. But what else was there? A surge of adrenaline fueled her legs as she dashed forward, the cacophony behind her growing louder, more threatening. As the light enveloped her, it didn't feel like the sanctuary she hoped for. Instead, it felt like a trap springing shut, an all-consuming brightness that scalded her eyes. As quickly as it appeared, she was thrust into a different scene entirely. She stumbled forward into what appeared to be a bustling office. Her office. Familiar faces passed by, laughing and chatting, but they all bore expressions of confusion as they stared in her direction. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she realized she was not merely an observer, she was fully visible, standing lost, teetering on the edge of sanity. She was there, but a part of her was still trapped in the darkness. "Lisa?" A colleague called, their voice sliced through the haze, but it felt so far away. "Are you all right?" The laughter of the shadows was still there, echoing in her ears, and she could see the edges of darkness creeping around the corners of her coworker's smiles. Her heart raced. They could sense it, too, couldn't they? The terror lurking beneath the surface, waiting for her to slip once more. Was this some cruel joke? Had she truly escaped one nightmare only to step into another? A roaring unease swelled within her as doubt festered. "Lisa? You look pale. You should sit down," a voice said, pulling her further into their reality, but the room began to distort, shapes warping as laughter spilled into an ominous chorus. Suddenly, a portal appeared behind her, a yawning mouth of shadows breathing heavily, inviting her back in. Her choice hung before her. What would she become if she stepped forward? "Which life would you like?" the darkness whispered. As Lisa stood poised to make a decision, the weight of her past teamed up with her uncertain future. She felt the world shift beneath her feet. Every heartbeat drummed loudly, urging her toward the next step. But she would not be an echo. Not again. What lay on the other side of that darkness? The shadows behind her twisted and churned, clawing at the light surrounding her as if sensing her hesitation. Lisa's heart raced, the thumping echoing like a war drum in her chest. What awaited her back in that impenetrable darkness? She felt as though 1,000 eyes were watching, waiting for her to make the wrong choice. "Lisa," the colleague called again, breaking her moment of paralysis. She turned to see concern etched on their features, an earnest plea that made her instincts scream. Was this real, or just another cruel trick of the darkness? "Sit down. You need to rest." The shadows pressed in, curling around the edges of her mind, whispering truths she wanted to deny. They promised her the chance to escape the mundane, hadn't they? Now, the choice felt more like a death sentence. "Please," she murmured, taking a shaky step back. Was there a way to shut out the shadows, the taunting laughter? "I just want to be safe." "You don't need to choose," the voice from her office insisted, but it sounded distant, blurred like static. "You're fine here." Before she could respond, the shadows surged forth, rushing past her colleagues, eager to claim her. Lisa instinctively recoiled, the darkness now forming a tangible mass that blocked her path, a living, breathing entity that pressed against her skin, icy and suffocating. An image flickered in her mind, the cracked faces of the trapped souls, their eyes voided of hope and filled with despair. They were begging her to join them. "Help me," she cried, no longer caring if anyone heard. Desperation fueled every ounce of her being. Was this the moment they would all turn to her, revealing their shared fate? Too late, a sizzling voice hissed from within the black mist, an exaggerated glee crackling like electricity. "Once you open the door, there's no turning back." As if to punctuate the threat, the temperature around her dropped. She gasped as images of twisted faces danced before her, their smiles morphing into grotesque masks, leering expectantly. "No. No." She backed away from the rising shadows, yuking toward the portal, which loomed larger now, inviting yet terrifying. Her mind raced, trying to grasp some solution that didn't involve becoming part of that chaos. Then, she remembered her deepest fears, the guilt that had tethered her to a life she no longer wanted. What if she faced that darkness, not with fear, but with defiance? What if she could break free, reclaim her power? "I want to let you take me," she screamed, a sudden surge of resolve igniting within. She slammed her hands against the figurative wall between herself and the shadows, willing them back. The light flickered as the shadows recoiled, seeming weak in the face of her fierce declaration. Lisa stumbled forward, panic flooding her heart, but she couldn't stop now. She could feel the oppressive weight of despair lifting, if only slightly, as she pushed herself toward the portal, heart racing. With every ounce of strength, she launched herself through, not into the darkness but into the light, willing it to swallow her whole, to purge the memories still clutching at her throat. But as she fell into that radiant expanse, the harsh laughter erupted anew, echoing in her mind louder than ever. The familiar rush was disorienting, and she landed hard, breath knocked from her lungs. She lay there dazed, trying to gather her thoughts as the laughter transformed into something else, something more sinister. It morphed into frantic cries, a cacophony of panic. Lisa! The echoes of voices began threading together, creating a story, but not one she wanted to hear. Why didn't you save us? And as she blinked away the haze, she realized where she was, back in the office, but everything felt different. The twisted expressions on her colleagues' faces now looked real, the shadows still lingering in the corners of her mind, amplifying their cries for help. "Help us, Lisa," they whispered in unison, a haunting harmony echoing around her, but could she trust her own judgment? Were these the shadows trying to ensnare her once more? Her decision loomed over her, pregnant with consequence. In her heart, she feared one thing above all: could she still fight back, or had she finally opened the door to an inescapable fate? And underneath it all, the voice of the darkness slithered through her thoughts: you can never escape what you truly are. What did that mean for her? Would she be consumed by what lurked in the shadows, or could she forge a path forward, finding light in the darkest corners? Lisa sat up with a jolt, the cries echoing around her like a discordant symphony. The office that had once felt like a refuge now pulsed with dread. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching and recoiling with every flicker of the fluorescent lights above. Each breath she took felt heavy, filled with an invisible weight that threatened to suffocate her along with the accusations of her colleagues. "Help us, Lisa," the words hung in the air, thick and tangible. Each whisper sawed at her sanity, gnawing at her resolve. Her colleagues' faces were pale, eyes wide and pleading, as if trying to pull her into their abyss of despair. "What do you want from me?" she managed to whisper, her voice barely audible, choked by fear. A figure stepped forward from the flickering shadows, their face obscured, but a sinister smile broke through the darkness, wide and knowing. "Only that you join us," it said, voice dripping with mock tenderness. "You have the power to save us or condemn us." Lisa's heart raced. Was this the path she had chosen? Was she trapped in a nightmare of her own making? "Wake up, Lisa," one of her colleagues urged, desperation etched into their features. "You need to fight. Please." But their eyes, filled with unspoken horror, spoke volumes. This was no longer just her battle. This was a collective struggle against a malevolent force that had claimed them. Suddenly, the room began to tremble. Desks rattled, papers flew through the air, and the shadows came alive, swirling around her like a tempest. They seemed to echo her fears, their laughter melding with the screams of her colleagues. "You're not strong enough to escape," they taunted. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She recalled her own darkness, the guilt and failures that had haunted her for so long. Was this it? Was she doomed to be a part of their torment? "No!" she shouted, her voice cracking with determination. "I won't let you destroy me." The shadows paused, momentarily stunned by her sheer will. But a haunting chorus erupted again, louder and more insistent, urging her to yield. "Lisa, it's easier if you give in," they advanced, a creeping tide of despair pulling at her, threatening to engulf her whole. In that moment, Lisa felt an ember of defiance spark within her. She reached deep, remembering what it felt like to be more than fear. She could be strength. "I'll find a way," she called, clenching her fists as a surge of warmth coursed through her body. The shadows recoiled, screeching as if burnt by her light. "You can't. You're ours." A fierce wind roared through the office, slamming doors and rattling windows. As furniture crashed around her, a sudden realization pierced through the chaos: the darkness had grown strong by feeding on her fears. If she could confront them, summon her will. Lisa's heart raced with newfound energy, and she shot a glance at her colleagues. Their desperate faces filled her with purpose. "Together," she cried, "we can push back." The affirmations fueled her, each echoing word fanned the flame within, but just as unity sprouted, a shadow loomed larger, towering above them, a grotesque form of the darkest kind, pulsing with rage. "You think you can resist?" it growled, the voice dripping with malice. "You'll never escape it." Lisa's chest tightened as the weight of the looming threat settled upon her like lead. She was teetering on the edge of a cliff, fear stinging her eyes. Was the strength she grasped truly enough? The shadows began to lose their form once again, faces melding into something monstrous, stretching farther than she thought possible. "This isn't over." They hissed, launching toward her, and the cacophony deafened her thoughts, but as she stood firm, feeling her heartbeat resonate with defiance, a sliver of hope ignited. "We'll find a way," she screamed, echoing through her mind. A pull at the edges of her awareness, a hint of liberation. But just as the shadows lunged forward, ready to swallow her whole, there was a brilliant flash of light, a loud pop echoed through them, and then silence. The shadows faltered and fell, but she wasn't sure for how long. As Lisa blinked back clarity, the office slowly returned to view, signs of light flickering over unfamiliar landscapes. Her colleagues stood still, but something was wrong. The colors around them blurred, flickering as if alive. What now? Lisa's heart raced, and panic erupted as she realized something didn't feel right after all. The questions crawled beneath her skin: had she truly escaped the darkness, or had she just stepped into a darker chapter of her fate? The uncertainty hung thick in the air, clinging to her like a curse, and somewhere in the distance, that sinister laughter returned, a promise of consequences yet unknown. What happens now? She whispered to herself, gripping onto the hope within her tightly, knowing she might just be at the brink of another haunting revelation. The air crackled, and Lisa instinctively took a step back, her breath hitching in her throat. The shadows had pulled away, but the remnants of their presence still swirled around her like dark smoke. Her colleagues seemed frozen, their eyes wide with terror, as if they had been trapped in a nightmare from which they couldn't wake. "What's happening?" she whispered, scanning the office for anything that was familiar. The walls rippled, and she felt an unsettling pull, like gravity had shifted without her notice. The fluorescent lights above buzzed erratically, casting erratic glows over her colleagues as their forms flickered like images on a broken screen. The office felt like a warped realm, suspended between reality and a twisted dream. "Lisa!" someone cried, their voice breaking through the distorted haze. It was Sara, still in her crisp business attire, but her face was marred with a strange pallor. We can't stay here. Where do we go?" Lisa felt panic swirling in her gut. How could she lead them when she hardly knew where they were? "Look!" another colleague pointed, and Lisa turned to see a doorway, one that hadn't been in the office a moment ago, glowing eerily at the far end. It shimmered with an inviting light but was surrounded by shadowy tendrils, writhing like snakes hungry for prey. The laughter echoed again, this time closer, more threatening. A voice slipped through, smooth and seductive. "Run, little lambs, if you can't escape what you became. Let us move." Lisa shouted, her instinct to protect tripping over her fear. She seized Sara's arm and pulled her toward the doorway, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. They ran, her other colleagues trailing behind like a cluster of terrified birds. As they approached that sickly glowing entrance, the shadows rose, thrusting around them like clutches of dark claws, grasping and grappling. "You were chosen!" they shrieked, seeping into her thoughts, filling her mind with despair. "Together, we can do this!" Lisa yelled back at her colleagues, her determination surging through the terror. With one final push of adrenaline, she lunged towards the light, dragging Sara with her, and the others surged forward. In a split second, they crossed the threshold, tumbling into the light. It enveloped them, blinding and warm, but their relief was short-lived. They landed on the cold, hard tiles of a different room, this one a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind. "What just happened?" gasped Mark, breathing heavily as he pushed himself to sit up. The new room held no familiar comforts, its sterile atmosphere and clinical lights gave no hint of safety. It was like stepping into a hospital waiting area, devoid of life yet tinged with an unsettling sense of dread. Lisa got to her feet, her pulse racing. It's a new place. It has to be better than. There was a weight to her words. Whatever horror they had escaped was mighty. You could almost feel it lurking behind them, still waiting. Suddenly, the room's overhead lights flickered, casting a momentary shadow across a door at the far end. And, before she could react, the door began to creak open, the sound harsh and jarring in the quiet room. A figure stepped through, tall and draped in shadows, features indistinguishable. Emotion pinched at her heart. Was it another terror? Or something else? Welcome. The voice was calm, almost too calm, filling the sterile air with a bone-chilling echo. You've come quite a long way. But the journey is only beginning. Lisa felt dread creeping back, coiling around her heart with unforgiving tightness. What had they truly escaped, and what lay ahead of them in this unfamiliar space? Step deeper into your new beginning. The figure beckoned, their hand extended as if offering something perilous yet enticing. Run! Lisa urged her colleagues, but the words fell on deaf ears as her gaze locked on the figure, a terrifying curiosity anchoring her in place. Before she could understand the weight of what stood before them, the room trembled, walls vibrating with anticipation, and the laughter returned, a haunting resonance that promised they hadn't seen the worst of it yet. As the shadows edged closer, she took a breath, heart racing. What now? She whispered again, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach. They were running out of time, and the light promised safety felt anything but. What awaited them on the other side of that door? Would they find salvation or a deeper descent into darkness? Lisa felt like the walls were closing in, the figure's voice wrapping around her like a serpent. Step deeper into your new beginning echoed in her ears, and it sent shivers racing down her spine. She forced her eyes away from the shadowy outline, her instinct screaming that this was no invitation but a trap. Guys! We have to move! She yelled, the urgency surfacing in her voice. But it felt like they were stuck in a nightmare. Mark was still gasping as if he could hardly breathe, and Sara's eyes were glassy, fixated on the figure like a moth drawn to a flame. Don't let it take you! Lisa screamed, grabbing Sara's shoulder and shaking her. We can't listen. But the laughter hung in the air, lingering like a haunting melody. The others seemed paralyzed, soaking up the fear like a sponge. The shadows thickened, extending toward them like greedy fingers eager to drag them back. Run! The command burst out of Lisa, catalyzing something in the others. Mark shot to his feet, the fight igniting in his eyes. Sara blinked, shaking her head as if waking from a spell. The figure's eyes sparkled in the dim light, a glint of amusement, as if entertaining their struggle. You think you can escape? It crooned with a low and dreadful resonance, filling the small room with a sense of dread that chilled Lisa to the bone. Together! Lisa shouted, as they all began running toward the only escape, the door at the far end, still ajar and flickering with that unnerving glow. But just as they reached it, a wall of darkness surged, a solid wave that crashed down like the weight of the entire world. You are the chosen ones! 1,000 voices screamed around them, and Lisa felt the floor shift beneath her feet. They stumbled back, clutching each other for support. I can't, Sara whimpered. Listen to me. Lisa shouted. We have to focus. We're stronger together. We can push through. The laughter twisted and turned, echoing hauntingly through the sterile room. Lisa could feel the figures lurking, threatening to snatch them back. She grabbed Mark's hand and pulled him close. To the door. On 3. 1, 2, 3. As one, they surged forward, crashing against the threshold, and the darkness fought back with teeth and claws. It clawed at them, biting into their skin, whispering depravities that gnawed at their sanity. Lisa screamed, pushing through the pain. Don't stop. Keep going. With one final shove, they flung themselves through the doorway, tumbling into what felt like an abyss. The shadows screamed behind them, but Lisa didn't look back. They landed on hard concrete, a stark contrast to the clean tiles of the room they just escaped. The air was thick with a metallic scent, and as they scrambled to their feet, panic flooded Lisa's senses once more. They stood in a dimly lit corridor, the walls pulsating with a sickly green glow, and every instinct told her they had not escaped hell, just transitioned to a new level of it. "Where are we?" Mark asked, dread creeping into his voice. Lisa strained to listen. Ahead of them was the faint sound of whispering, the same sinister laughter now tugging at the edges of her mind. A sign on the wall flickered ominously, "Hope is a mirage." "What does it mean?" Sara's voice shook, her eyes darting nervously. "Is this a game?" Mark murmured. "Because I don't want to play anymore." They huddled together, hearts thundering, each breath heavy with despair. "Maybe it's our way out," Lisa uttered, but a shiver ran down her spine as she exchanged glances with Sara. "Or maybe it's a trap." The hallway branched off in two directions, each path cloaked in shadows, adorned with faintly illuminated signs that seemed to mock them. "Which way do we go?" Mark asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lisa felt her resolve wavering. Either choice loomed like a specter, both paths potentially leading them deeper into a nightmare. And then, the laughter returned, echoing off the walls, a relentless reminder that darkness was not done with them yet. "Runners or dreamers?" the voice resonated through the corridor, chilling them to the core. "Which will you choose?" The question hung heavily in the air as they turned towards each option, uncertainty and fear flooding their senses. What awaited them at the end of either path? Despair or deliverance? The walls seemed to pulse with darkness, thumping like a heartbeat, mirroring the terror surging through Lisa's veins. She let out a shaky breath, her mind racing. The figure's laughter had left a lingering sense of dread, as if something far more sinister hovered just out of reach. "Let us not split up," she said, clarity pushing through the fog of fear. "We stick together, no matter what." Mark nodded stiffly, pulling Sara closer. "Left or right? Any preferences?" The shadows around them danced, twisting shapes that seemed to whisper secrets of the corridor, a sinister invitation. Lisa swallowed hard, scanning the signs that loomed overhead. The one on the left flickered with a faint light, its lettering barely discernible. It read Redemption. The one on the right, darker and almost slithering, barked Doom. "Redemption feels positive." Sara's voice trembled. "But it could be a trap," Mark replied, glancing sidelong at the creeping darkness. "Doom sounds just as bad, but at least we know what we're facing." "What if we made it worse by lingering here?" Lisa asked, her heart racing. Before they could answer, the laughter swelled around them, rich, mocking, as if the very walls were alive with a twisted sense of humor. "Choose," it taunted. "Step into the light, or embrace the dark. You decide your fate." With each passing heartbeat, choice felt increasingly impossible. They could already feel the darkness pushing in, eager to claim them. Lisa weighed her options, glancing down the path to redemption. "Let us go left," she declared. As they took a step into the corridor of redemption, the air seemed to shift. The glow intensified, bathing them in a sickly warmth that felt almost pleasant. But it was an illusion, that much was clear. The whispers grew louder, swirling with words that slipped just out of reach. Sara's voice quivered. "Did you hear that?" "It's just the echoes, let us keep moving," she urged, pushing herself forward. They walked briskly, the thrill of movement contrasting starkly with the echoing laughter mixing with whispers that twisted the air like vines. Suddenly, Mark froze. "Do you see that?" In front of them hung a door, slightly ajar, with a strange luminosity emanating from within. "Hope or allure?" "Maybe it's a way out," Sara suggested, hope flickering in her eyes. Lisa took a cautious step closer. "Or maybe it leads deeper into this nightmare." "Only one way to find out," Mark said, edging toward the door. Before Lisa could voice her hesitation, he pushed it open. A rush of light spilled out, illuminating the room beyond. It was a stark contrast to the enveloping darkness, but it felt too welcoming, too good to be true. "Step inside," the figure's voice purred from behind them. "Your fate awaits." Lisa hesitated, her heart racing. "Wait. What if this is what it wants? We need to know." Mark's eyes glinted with a dangerous mix of fear and curiosity. As they prepared to step into the unknown, the sinister laughter boiled around them, echoing louder and louder until it shook the very ground beneath their feet. "Are you ready to play?" The voice teased, layered with a sense of malice. The door creaked ominously, jolting Lisa from her thoughts. She wrestled with the decision pressing down on them like a weight. "On three," Mark said, his voice strong but trembling. 1, 2. The shadows began to swirl furiously as the laughter crescendoed, closing in around them. 3. But as they lunged forward, the floor beneath them lurched violently, sending them tumbling into chaos. Darkness engulfed them, and the last thing Lisa saw was the door slamming shut, sealing off the light. What awaited them was no longer up to them to decide. In the suffocating darkness, the only steady sound was the echo of laughter as they landed once more, scraped knees and punctured hope. Where were they now? And would they ever find their way back to the light? In the suffocating darkness, Lisa felt the weight of despair pressing down on her. The echoes of their laughter bounced around them, an unwelcome reminder of their lost hope. The chaos of their last moments surged back like a tidal wave, crashing against her heart, a mix of fear and unbearable confusion. "Is anyone hurt?" she croaked, her voice fragile as she pushed herself up. Shakily, they all managed to sit up, their faces half hidden in the shadows. "I can't see anything." Mark's voice trembled, a reflection of Lisa's dread. They were trapped again, in a void that had no beginning and no end. Suddenly, the darkness peeled away, revealing a dimly lit room flooded with flickering greens and deep indigos. Shadows writhed along the walls, their shapes darting in and out of sight as Lisa's heart raced. "We have to get out of here," she shouted, panic streaking through her veins. "Where's the exit?" Sara's voice was sharp, laced with urgency. "I don't know," Lisa replied, scanning the room for a sign of escape. The shadows pulsed, creeping toward them like rushing water, eager to reclaim what they had cast off. But amidst the rush of terror, Lisa felt something inside of her, a flicker of resilience igniting. "Together," she urged, grasping Sara's hand tightly. Mark joined, forming a circle of defiance. "If we hold on to each other, we can face this." The voices around them grew louder, a twisted cacophony of mocking laughter and murmuring pleas. Each syllable threaded with fear, tugging at their minds, threatening to unravel their resolve. "Don't give in," Lisa shouted. She could feel the chilling brush of a shadow against her skin, wrapping her like a shroud. "Fight back." And then it happened. A wave of energy surged through them, fueled by fear and hope combined. Lisa closed her eyes, pushing against the weight of the darkness. Images invaded her mind, the faces of those she thought she might never see again, the laughter of friends, the thrill of victories small and large. They were not just memories, they were the anchors that would guide them through. To her surprise, an indomitable light erupted from within her chest, spilling outward like rays of sunshine breaking through a storm. "We're not alone," she cried, emboldened by the connection pulsing between them. The shadows flickered in response, shrieking as the light engulfed them. "Faster," Mark urged, their energy building with each passing second. The darkness reared back, twisting in agony as the room fought against them. "Push!" With a final, deafening roar, they surged ahead into the blinding light that consumed the shadows whole. They landed outside, sprawling in a soft meadow, the sun's warmth kissing their skin. The laughter faded, leaving behind an echo of relief. The once terrifying office building stood in the distance, a silhouette against the vibrant sky, no longer shrouded in mystery, only fading dread. As they rose to their feet, shaky and disoriented but free, they exchanged glances, a new understanding passing between them. "We did it," Lisa breathed, her heart calming. Together, Sara smiled, a genuine light shining in her eyes. "That's the key." Lisa felt a rush of hope surge through her. Perhaps the shadows would always linger at the edges of their lives, but now, they wielded something more powerful than fear: connection, freedom, and the courage to reclaim their narratives. They were not just survivors, they were warriors unafraid to face what lay ahead. With renewed spirit, they walked away from that haunted place, leaving behind the echoes of their past. They headed into the horizon, determined to build a life not just outside the grasp of darkness, but filled with the light they'd fought to ignite. "Let us make a pact," Mark said, as they stepped into the beautifully sunlit world, "to always share our stories. So we can keep the shadows at bay." And Lisa nodded, knowing they had forged their bond through fear and triumph. They were free now, and that freedom was forever theirs. But a distant murmur floated in the wind, an unresolved specter leaving only a chilling. "Promise, you'll never escape what you truly are. Let it come," Lisa whispered softly, courage enveloping her heart. "We're ready." As they walked away from the old office, hand in hand, they embraced the dawn of their new reality together. They could take on anything that lay ahead. Don't miss your chance to dive deeper into the mysteries. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on all exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash that like button to feed the algorithm and help others discover this thrilling journey. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about what lies ahead. We want to hear you, and of course, don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to explore the next gripping tale with you.